Hello, everybody. My name is Oliver Laasch, and I'm the author of the textbook Principles of Management, Practicing Ethics, Responsibility, and Sustainability. And I'm recording this video because your course instructor kindly invited me to have a quick chat with you, or a quick presentation about how your course topic actually relates to the book itself and my ideas about how you could use this book well. So let's see how that goes. Let me share my screen and let's have a look at a small presentation together that I have prepared. There we go. So the title of that quick presentation is going to be about 10 minutes, I hope, is The Mess We Are In and Why We Need Transdisciplinary Responsible Management to Get Out of It. As mentioned before, this is a presentation that I will post more widely on the internet for others to use as well, but primarily this is dedicated to you, dear students, and Fatemeh, who is the lecturer at the University of Manchester at Alliance Manchester Business School, the course Interdisciplinary Sustainable Development. So let's see how we can connect that course to the book and the different contents and the larger topic of responsible management, or also what I like to call professional management, a management that is in service of society and the planet. So we all are aware how tough the times are we're living in right now. So it's not only about the recent COVID pandemic, but there's a whole array of different systemic problems, very often of an environmental, ecological nature that we're living through right now. And of course, Greta Thunberg is only one of the voices and one of the very successful and powerful activists who have made a big contribution to us actually recognizing the mess that we are in. So there's a quote: people are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We're in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual? So very strong words. Some people might think she is overdoing it a little bit there, but I actually think this hits the nail on the head. This is the type of situation we're in, and that our systems have not collapsed yet is really a miracle, but it's also something that is because we have for such a long time become very good at just saving ourselves just before the collapse happens. But in the foreseeable future, we're not going to be able to do that. And a very central aspect of that is actually management. So if you think about the type of problems that management and the type of for-profit, always growing type of management has created, well, a lot of that actually relates then to this quote by a gentleman called Martin Parker, who wrote a book called Shut Down the Business School, because the business school is where we're training managers. So he said management has made the world that we live in, but at the same time, this world could actually be destroyed by the very management practices that we're having right now. So the idea in, I understand in your course, and the idea that it shares with this textbook is to think about how can we transform management in a way that it moves from being a destructive force on that planet and in our society towards a force that is very positive and that can actually solve some of the problems, and at the very least not keep repeating creating the same issues that it has created over the years. And if you don't agree that management has been bad so far, have a very close look at the first chapter of the second edition of that book. We don't have the time to go deep into that argument here. Another set of people who agreed, and I'm going a little bit more local now, a particular company, are these fellows at Amazon. So they actively demonstrate, they're employees of Amazon, actively demonstrated and made a big wave about the practice that they deemed unsuitable for our times right now of their own company. So there's even employee activism coming up in many companies, where people just say, sorry, we can't go on like this. It has to become different. So the area that we're in right now, the kind of context we're in, is one of a transition. So it's kind of trying to transition from an old world management, a management that's bad for the planet in many different ways, but also a management that has shaped our planet over the last 150, 200 years, but also to then think, okay, what can we do? How can we transform this very, very powerful practice of management so that it becomes something that actually is a force for good, that strengthens our planet, that strengthens our human existence on it. And a very central topic to that is actually a science-driven topic. So it's about the planetary boundaries and how far we can go, stretching those boundaries and still survive as humanity on this earth. And then kind of operationalizing those science-driven planetary boundaries, we can think about the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a agenda for addressing the most urgent, the most pressing aspects of the mess that we are in. So let's have a quick look at the planetary boundaries first. So you see those are very, very much natural science driven. So it's all about climate change, respectively CO2 emissions and the global warming impact they have. So it's very much a science-driven topic. They're about ocean acidification and how that could lead to a collapse of the ocean ecosystem, which is already happening if you look at how the rate at which coral reefs are disappearing, which are the nursery for most of the species living in the ocean, and a large proportion of that us actually living from them. Or you could think about land system change, so how are forests, which are really, really crucial for our planet and us living on it, and all the other species living on it, how those are being changed towards farmland in order to be able to just barely be able to feed humanity. So we are in problems when we look at it from the planetary boundary system. You see, most of those are very much natural science, ecological type of problems. But then there are the Sustainable Development Goals. And you see that those have some of those environmental, ecologic issues in there, but also they translate the topic to the larger societal connection between environment, between society, and between the economy. And this is exactly where we start to address the mess that we are in by following these goals. And of course, they're not perfect. There are others out there as well, but I think they're a very, very good thing to begin with. And actually, in our book, you will see that on every page, we place the small logos of the Sustainable Development Goals so that you actually can see how the particular content on that page or part of it relates to addressing one of the Sustainable Development Goals. But your course is one about interdisciplinarity. And so what we're going to try to find out together now is why interdisciplinarity? Couldn't we just use the discipline of management and address it? Couldn't it be just a business thing that we do? And we're actually going to move one step further. So we're going to go beyond interdisciplinarity, and we're going to claim that we actually need something called transdisciplinarity. And we're going to get to what that means. But let's look at a couple of examples first. So here we do have the example of Coronation Street, the world's longest running soap opera, produced here in Manchester, where I'm sitting right now. About I actually go for a run there very often. The studios are about 1 kilometer, a little bit less than a mile for somebody from the Anglo-Saxon context over there. Very local, very interesting case. But you will see that even in this case, which is very strongly focused on carbon literacy, so how everybody in the organization knows what their actions, what their daily work life has in terms of an impact on the CO2 emissions, and how that actually needs many, many different disciplines. So it needs people, as you will see in those videos, have a look at them. They're on YouTube. So if you look for Coronation Street and if you look for responsible management and my name, Oliver Laasch, you will find those videos. And I believe actually your instructor is intending to show you this particular video. Have a look at it. So we're going through the set of Coronation Street and we're looking at the different departments. And as you will see, people from super different backgrounds, they have to be on board in order to address the topic of carbon literacy and of global warming together. One of them can't do it. They interlink, they're entangled, they cannot be separated out. So we see how journalists are doing it, how lawyers are doing it, how procurement people are doing it, how the people building the sets are doing it, how the people in the doing the costumes are doing it, even how the actors are doing it. So all of them have to act together, and they come from very, very different disciplinary backgrounds. And at the same time, you will also see it's not only about the different disciplines, it is also about different sectors of society working together. So the very fact that I went there as an educator and an academic, so coming from the academic sector, in order to not only learn from them, but also that other academics have gone there in order to help them do it, shows how we need not only different disciplines, so not only economics and journalism and acting and natural science and engineering do it together, but also how different sectors have to do it together. So for instance, me being somebody in business by background, but in the academic sector, also needs to interact with people who are also in business, in this case, in the business of producing television shows, but in the practitioner, in the professional sector, right? So this is very, very, very important. And this is where we move towards transdiscipline. So it's not only about interdiscipline between those different disciplines, economics, journalism, and so on, but it is also about transcending the boundaries of different sectors. And that's what we mean with transdiscipline. We have to look beyond the practitioners in our own sector. Me as an academic, I have to look, in order to contribute to the solution, I have to look at what professionals are doing, and they, vice versa, might learn something from what I'm doing as well. So there's a mutually together type of responsible management learning that then can help us to solve those problems. And just another couple of examples real quick. So very, very interesting example, and you see that happening around the world right now, how supermarkets, that's an example from Chiang Mai in Thailand, start doing away with plastic packaging. If you look there, you're not going to find any plastic packaging at all. It's all packaged in natural products. So all of a sudden, what kind of knowledge from different sectors and from different disciplines do you need? You need to go back to indigenous knowledge about how did you actually in the past, and very often you see that in local communities still being practiced, how did you actually package things into their natural packaging, again, to keep it fresh. So you see palm leaves over here, for instance. You see bamboo shoots in order to tie it together. But also need the business knowledge in order to see how can you actually place that, sell that, so that people have trust in it and say, okay, that's going to stay fresh anyway. So there's a marketing aspect in there, a different discipline. But also there's an engineering aspect in there. So how do you actually then transport, and a logistics aspect as well, technologies and how you organize it, how you transport that stuff, not only to the supermarket, but how do you package it in a way so that people can also transport it home and it's still protected and safe and it's going to stay fresh. And one more example, that's a picture I took myself actually. So you see the straws here are made from paper. And you will know that in many, and this picture was taken in China, where at this point we didn't have legislation for that one as yet. So people weren't forced to do that, but very often we actually need to have the governmental sector involved as well, and making laws, making policies that give people the right incentives and create the right environment in order to make that kind of transformation, that kind of transition, something that actually happens. Good. And then there's even more need for transdisciplinarity. So if you only would stay in the rather narrow area of management, and you would say management is one discipline, but that's actually not true, because there's so many sub-occupations, very specialized ways on functions of managing inside management, that actually even there, it's already interdisciplinary and becomes transdisciplinary if you look at those different sets of knowledges or functions from different sectors. So you will have people who are very good at making strategies. It's a specialized area inside the occupation and of management. You might have R&D and innovation people. You might have people who are focusing on communication. Others might be focusing on the organizational aspects and structuring, organizational development. Others might be thinking about globalizing, so about how global and local connects, how you move things around on the globe, how you make that, how you do that sustainably, and so on. So even if you think about those normal practices of management, there are already so many different disciplines involved. And together with three very esteemed colleagues of mine, we actually explored that transdisciplinary nexus, that transdisciplinary entanglement of different practices that we need to engage in responsible management learning. So the one that we need in order to transform management in a way that it actually solves problems instead of creating them. So the idea is, once again, how do we can use management in order to get out of that mess, as opposed to getting us deeper into the mess that we're in right now. And if you think about responsible management, by definition, it actually already includes ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. So ethics over here, responsibility over here, sustainability over here. And it repeats here, ethics, responsibility, sustainability, right? So this would be our interdisciplinarity, once again from a different angle, because business ethics comes from a very, very different disciplinary background in comparison to corporate sustainability, in comparison to corporate responsibility. So it's very often it's psychologists up here thinking about why did we do right or wrong? Why does somebody do it? What can we do about it? And it's also philosophers, because it's a moral philosophy that that we can use in order to decide what's right or wrong. Corporate social responsibility very often comes from the perspective of stakeholder management. So it's about the relationships to different stakeholders, to different groups who are interested in what we're doing or whom we are interested in while we're doing it. Ed Freeman was the person who came up with this idea first. So it's a very different thinking from the normative and psychologist type of business ethics discipline. It's more a sociology type of perspective of how do we actually form that net of relationship, and how do we create responsibility by managing those relationships in a way that is good for everybody involved, or at least not bad. And then corporate sustainability very much comes from that kind of environmental, ecological sustainability, which is very much natural science driven. So it's very much about how do I measure my impacts? How do I actually trace the impact almost in an engineering way through life cycle assessment throughout all of the different stages of a product or of a certain activity. So this is all interdisciplinarity. So I think that's already clear. But at the same time, well, there's actually at least two different sectors involved, and probably many more, as we've seen in the recent examples. So it is about the business sector, where professional practitioners, professional managers engage in sustainability, responsibility, and ethics. So this is what's happening in Coronation Street in the example. This is what's happening in the supermarket in Chiang Mai. This is what's happening when the people at this small bar that I was in, I took the photo of the paper straw. That's what they've been doing. So this is the responsible management business sector, right? The commercial sector. But then at the same time, you also have responsible management, education, and research going on in the academic sector. And you folks taking a course right now, you're actually exactly at this intersection where those two sectors meet. And this is at those intersections, this is where the most important responsible management learning happens. And this is where we start very often to come up with new ideas that you only get when you combine knowledges from those different sectors to solve the issues that make the mess that we're in. So if you just try to structure that a little bit more. So if you think about the ideas that we just mentioned. So we have two considerations to find out if we actually being transdisciplinary. One is it a sectoral thinking or a sectoral knowledge that we're engaging right now, or is it intersectoral? So is it knowledge only from business professionals, from the business professional sector that only business professionals have, or is it knowledge also including the academic sector, so knowledge that typically academics have as well? So that's the distinction between sectorality or intersectorality. You could broaden that much more. You could say, okay, it's also if I'm actually also using knowledge and involving practitioners, collaborating with other practitioners from the governmental sector, or maybe from the kind of church and faith and religious sector, or maybe also from the non-governmental civil society sector. So the idea here is actually to tap into all of those different sets of knowledges and to make sure that we combine them in a way that helps us solving those very, very complicated problems that make the mess we're in. So, and of course, then not only moving between sectors, but also between different disciplines. So, and this is where the disciplinarity, interdisciplinarity point comes in over here. So and once again, so this is Emma only talking between people who have a background in business, so business and economics, for instance. So those people might be in the governmental sector, for instance, legislators who make economic legislation. Those might be practitioners in businesses, professionals, management professionals, or those might be academics like myself who are interested in economics and business and have a set of knowledge from that particular sector. So, but this way we're still disciplinary. We're not interdisciplinary yet. We become interdisciplinary if we also combine knowledge and collaborate with people who are coming from other disciplines. So all of a sudden now, if you're thinking about the pandemic, well, business alone is not going to solve it. But once we start talking to people, for instance, from the medical sector, we get very interesting solutions, like BrewDog, for instance. You might know this this kind of craft beer producer and proprietor of a chain of pubs, BrewDog. So they actually couldn't open right now because of the pandemic, but at the same time, the managers at BrewDog were trying to find out how could we actually chip in order to help do something about the mess we're in terms of the COVID pandemic right now. And first what they did was they were thinking, okay, well, we can actually, knowing internally across disciplines, we're in the kind of alcoholic beverages business. So if we talk to people in the medical sector, they use alcohol as well, don't they? So hand sanitizers have alcohol as well. So how about we actually trying to quickly change our production in a way that produces hand sanitizers? That's what they did. They started producing hand sanitizers very, very early on in the pandemic when there was a scarcity of hand sanitizers. And very recently then they announced that now they're talking with medical professionals in order to see how they can use their venues, so the pubs they have, in order to get people vaccinated. Isn't that great? So once again, if you were just a business, you wouldn't do that. But now you see, well, this place is empty. I'm still paying the rent. So I could also do something with it and actually fulfill part of my societal role, steer us into a good, professional, positive societal role. And we're going to use that space for something else because they're great locations. They are very accessible. Many people know them already. So it's very easy for them to get there, to just walk through a very central location, see, oh, look, they're actually doing the vaccines here. And maybe somebody who wouldn't have gotten vaccine otherwise, the vaccination otherwise, they might just walk in there and do it if they're the right group that's whose turn it is right now, right? So this is, of course, then we have to think about particularly about those different professions. If you think about those different layers down here, we have to think about those different sectors and different fields of practice, where then everything is practiced. So management is practiced, academia is practiced, education is practiced, research is practiced across different sectors and across different disciplines. That's where we are trying to get to, and this is where we're going to be able to stop many of the issues before they become a large global crisis like we see in terms of COVID. So that's just a quick taster. I assume you probably already have access to this book. So most of the slides here were from the book. Speak to your instructor. If you don't have access yet, I'm sure they will be able to make that happen. If you have any questions, please do post them on the discussion board on Blackboard of your course. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me in. And hopefully you found this short presentation useful. And please don't hesitate to be in touch if you want to talk more about it. If you've got ideas, or if you want me, if you're an instructor, for instance, or a student, and you would want me to come into your own class where you're using our book and see how I can tie in your class topic with what you are doing in your course. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to seeing you in person at some point in time.